Welcome to the Full Nilsson. I got my Christensen Arms Modern Precision Rifle back about 2 weeks ago, and today I'm going to be discussing some of the issues that this rifle had and what Christensen Arms has done to address those issues. I am also going to be talking a bit more about and showing you guys more about primary extraction and bolt timing. So let's get into it. Here I've got the Christensen Arms repair report. This has the details of what I sent to them, the issues I outlined when I sent this rifle into them, and what they have, the corrective action that they have taken. I also sent them a link to my video so that they would be able to watch it. And I can tell some of the things that I did not put down on the report, they addressed on this rifle anyway when they had it. And that was the folding stock part of this chassis. There's a set screw that was a little loose, and it would not affect how solidly it would lock up when it was locked out, or how solidly it would stay locked when you fold it in, or stick to this magnet. There were no issues there. It was in between. It's hard to describe. There was a little bit of play, and that's not supposed to be there, and can be eliminated simply by Loctiting this set screw, which I could have done, I would have done if they sent it back to me and hadn't done it. Just like I could have fixed a lot of the issues with this rifle myself, I could have fixed all of the issues I outlined, except for the bolt timing aspect is beyond my capability to fix on my own. I would have had to send it off to somebody else to address that. But anyway, that's not the point. The point was see what they'll do, hopefully give you guys some insight as to what it's going to be like if you guys happen to get one. Are they going to make sure the fit and finish is right? If you have problems, will they address them? So, here's the list of the other issues. It says, customer sent his rifle back for issues with bolt timing, muzzle brake timing, extraction issues, and the M-lock slots on the handguard were rough on one side of the handguard. Corrective action. We replaced the original bolt for a new one that has better primary extraction. 2. We timed muzzle brake correctly. 3. Fixed the M-lock slots on the handguard, and 4. Replaced the extractor spring. So, according to this list, they addressed everything that all of the issues this rifle had. Now, I've gone through to check whether or not they correct all of those issues, and for the most part, that's the case. Muzzle brake is timed properly. M-lock slots on the opposite side of this were sanded or smoothed out or whatever, so they don't feel like they're going to cut your fingers off. And the extractor spring has been replaced in this bolt, and they have replaced this bolt. I looked it over when I first got it, and I could tell that there was something different about the bolt. It looked like they had removed material or something, but they had actually just replaced the whole bolt. When I looked at the report, I could see that. Now, all of these issues I would consider to be fully resolved. I want to talk a little bit more in detail about the primary extraction and bolt timing, and I also I'm going to demonstrate the extraction and ejection on this rifle now and talk about the way it was. So before, if I took this rifle and I took an empty shell casing like this one or a live one and went cycle rounds through this, if I took it, closed the bolt on it, and went to extract it slowly, push the bolt handle back slowly, it would spit it out just the same as what you saw there. It was excellent for both live rounds and for spent rounds. The issue is if you went to run the bolt quicker, like you would if you were in a hurry, the twin ejectors, as I speculated in the previous video, and it looks like based off their repair report, I was right, the twin ejectors would overpower the extractor spring and the casing would slip off. When I first got this back, I felt the ejector or the extractor spring, pushed it out with my finger, and I could tell it is stiffer now than what it was before, that they've actually replaced that. And where you can really tell is if I grab this bolt, no matter how fast I rip on it, live rounds or empty casings, it spits them out with authority the way it should. So they've done an excellent job fixing that issue, and I suspect that for any of these rifles that they're shipping out now, that will be addressed. that you won't be getting one that has that issue, that now that they're aware of it, they'll just be putting a different spring in them, and that will no longer be an issue. But in the event that you do get one that has that issue, they fixed it on mine, and I suspect they'll fix it on yours. So, wouldn't worry about that at all. Now, the last part, which is the bolt timing and primary extraction. They said they replaced the bolt, and they did, but the bolt timing and primary extraction on this rifle are still pretty bad. And I'll show you some other rifle designs today. I had a Model 700 CDL that was 22-250 that was my dad's, that I helped him get rid of this last week. I didn't get around to making this video fast enough, or I would have showed you it was an older one back when they made them the way they were supposed to make them. Then you would have been able to see the exact same patterns and how they're supposed to be. But you will see on some of these other pattern rifles, on all bolt actions, they're supposed to be primary extraction, and the bolt has to be properly timed to accomplish that. On Model 700s, they're really sensitive in terms of the way the timing has to be, just because of the nature of the design of the bolt timing. But you'll see just how much more primary extraction there is on some of these other rifles than there is on this one. And on a quality Model 700, when it's timed properly, they'll have as much primary extraction as what you'll see on these rifles I'm gonna demonstrate. So, the layman way of testing whether or not how much primary extraction you've got, I'm gonna bring in here and show you this, is this bolt. When you lift it, so if I show you up here on top, you can see this angled cut on the action right there, okay? So what's supposed to happen is this bolt handle right here, this squared portion, is supposed to ride up into here, contact this surface, and pull that bolt out darn near as far as that cutout is, which is quite a ways. That would be perfect primary extraction, as if it followed that angled cut all the way as far as it can follow it. On that Model 700 I was telling you about that just got rid of last week, it was like that. I mean, superb. It would pop that bolt open perfectly, ride that pretty much the entire way. Now on this particular rifle, if I dry fire this, and I lift this bolt handle, and one of the things you want to do if you're checking primary extraction is you don't simply want to unlock the bolt and let it fly out. If you want to check it, you want to put slight pressure forward on the bolt as you raise it, because you're trying to force that contact just to see with the camming surfaces themselves when the bolt is fully rotated. Because when the shell casing is stuck in here, as you rotate that bolt handle, that thing the extractor sliding around the rim of the case, and that thing is stuck in there. What's going to end up happening is it's not going to be until it hits that surface that it's going to pop that swollen shell casing loose from the chamber. So if we take this, we can see, you see that slight bit of movement backwards. Okay? That's how much contact there is on this particular rifle. And it's not much. You can see it's probably riding, let's look here. From the point it actually starts to make contact, starts to go back, it's probably not even riding that cam surface 50% of what it should be. So you can see there is some primary extraction, there is some movement backwards, and I will go out in my full review when I shoot this thing, find out if that's adequate enough to break the cases loose to where they're not sticking. And if it is, I'll probably live with it the way it is. If it's not, I'll reach out to Christensen Arms or a gentleman in Alaska that I know specializes in bolt timing on Model 700s, and have them get this thing timed properly. Now, for a layman, for any person who's not real familiar and like, well, if I go into a gun shop, how can I know whether or not the bolt's timed properly? First off, I will say I've only seen this issue on Model 700s, but I've seen it on a lot of Model 700s or Model 700 pattern rifles, especially as of late. Remington's lost their way, and they have people there that I don't even think understand their own designs. And so, you know, you've got to be an informed consumer and know what you're looking at when you walk in there. Now, My rule of thumb to determine whether or not I think it's adequate for me is I would walk into a shop, and if I took a rifle like this, cycled the action, which of course you want to ask them if you can do this. Most places don't have a problem. Most bolt actions are designed to be dry fired without really doing any significant kind of damage. And also, you know, they'll let you test the trigger or whatever. But just make sure that that's okay. You know, don't point it at somebody and make it nervous. But anyway, dry fire the rifle, then lift up on the bolt while holding the bolt forward pressure. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. So I'm forcing that contact, and I'm riding it all the way to the top. I can't raise it anymore. Now, while still holding that bolt forward, I'm going to push it back down into place, and you'll notice the trigger didn't reset. And that's because the camming surfaces on this, because the timing is so poor, did not force that bolt to travel far enough to reset the trigger. That ought to be a basic rule of thumb for most people that they can go by and say, yeah, this gun does not have enough primary extraction and the bolt is not timed properly to where I would purchase a rifle like that, generally speaking. So this rifle doesn't pass that test. That's the test I would usually go by. Now let me grab some other rifles here. And I know some of you are going to say, well, my Model 700 doesn't do that or this. Well, exactly. It's a big problem nowadays with Model 700s. I've seen some that are still excellent, some that are not, but it's something to be leery of, pay attention to. So this is a Winchester Model 70. You'll notice the cutout on the bolt is here, and instead of it being like the Remington, let me pull this bolt out, and I'll show you how they approach it. You can see, hopefully in there, there's a machined cut back inside this action. You can see that that's cut at an angle. And that's to interface with this bolt for its primary extraction. Every bolt action that I've seen has one way or another of addressing this primary extraction issue. And the surfaces sometimes are machined in different places. I'm going to show you a few examples. This is one of them. But watch how far this bolt travels. When we open it, check primary extraction. Now we're going to do the same test, dry fire the rifle. Now I'm going to lift the bolt handle up while applying forward pressure, just so that the bolt doesn't just pop open on its own. I want to see what would happen if the case was actually stuck, simulate that, and this bolt is raised to as high as it can be raised, what kind of mechanical leverage this is going to give us on that shell casing. So if I raise this up, you see how far that popped open? Okay, on a Model 70, you can actually set it so that the firing, so that it's smoother by capturing. You can set it on its 3-position safety, set it to where the spring is basically being held in place so that you're not having to overcome that spring pressure, and it makes it a little easier. But anyway, look how far that travels for primary extraction. That is a significant amount, and it's significant enough that of course it resets the trigger. I cannot hold forward pressure on this rifle while raising the bolt to its full range of motion and not have it reset the trigger. Excellent bolt timing. The only rifles I see that seem to struggle with this issue, like I mentioned, are Model 700 pattern rifles. So I've got a Howa 1500 here as well. Goes about it a little bit differently than a Model 700 as well, but the principle is still the same. So the way Howa accomplishes their primary extraction is that they, back of the action here, rather than being machined square, has an angled cut. But the angled cut's clear over here on the left-hand side of the action. You can see clear over here on the left-hand side of the action. See, that's not square, that angle cut. Now when you dry fire the rifle, just like before, you're going to hold slight pressure forward on the bolt, run it through its full range of motion. You can see that part of the bolt there that then contacts that surface, and of course it's perfect, resets the trigger and everything the way that it should. but you can see how much primary extraction there is. Pretty significant amount. Okay, enough to reset the trigger and enough to break the shell casing loose in the chamber of the rifle. So in conclusion, where does that lead me as far as my thoughts or feelings about this Christensen Arms Modern Precision Rifle? Well, I would say the response so far from Christensen Arms has been excellent. They have attempted to address every single one of the issues that I've had with this rifle. And I would say, other than the primary extraction and bolt timing issue, they have succeeded. I don't worry about the ejection or extraction at all, other than, as I mentioned, the bolt timing aspect of the primary extraction breaking the shell casing loose. But in terms of the extractor itself slipping off or any of that, it's completely been remedied. The fit and finish, all of those things, the muzzle brake timing, they've addressed all of those issues. So props to them for doing that. They paid for return shipping. They've made every attempt to make it right. And I wouldn't hesitate to do business with them as a result of that. I'm happy to recommend companies that stand behind their product. Now, in terms of my overall satisfaction with this rifle, assuming that the primary extraction doesn't turn out to be an issue with me having shell casings that are sticking in the chamber after they're fired as a result of an inadequate amount of primary extraction, I'll be more than happy to run this rifle the way it is and not make any further adjustments to it. Stay tuned for a full review. It'll probably take a while. There's too much snow around here to be able to put this thing through its paces the way I would like to. I plan on taking this rifle out to 2,500 yards or so, and I'll show you guys some groups probably at closer ranges, 100 yards, and then show you guys long range performance. Anyway, that won't be happening for a while just because conditions here don't really permit that at the moment. Anyway, if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those in the comment section below. Hope this information was helpful. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.